Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Wednesday, January 8th. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over the breaking news of the last 24 hours in the NFL as Antonio Pierce has been let go as the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. In this segment, we turn our attention to another voting in the NFL, this time from the players about the players. The NFL players, for the third time annually now, have picked an all-pro team of their peers. We're going to talk about who made that list, if it was the right decision, and who ultimately got left off of it. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you would like to be if you have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday, January 8th. But like I was saying, we're going to get into the all-pro team voted on by the players. And I think this is more indicative of a lot of things, and it really shows the difference between the media, how the media views certain players and how the players view themselves. Now, it's only first team all-pro. They didn't do the second and third team like the media does. So it really shows you who they think is the best of the best. We're going to start off on the defensive side of the ball here. And honestly, I thought they did a really good job this year. There's a couple guys that potentially could have gotten in, but I don't think there was a single one that they got wrong, at least on the defensive side here. So we're going to start off with the defensive line. They picked two interior defensive linemen, starting with Chris Jones from the Kansas City Chiefs. He, of course, is one of the most dominant forces in all of the NFL. And they also paired him up with Jalen Carter, who really emerged this season as the Philadelphia Eagles defense did as well, and is one of the key reasons why that defense is as successful as it is right now. Now, Jalen Carter, the one thing that I really want to highlight about him, and I'm sure a lot of you guys watching this already know this, but he plays almost 100% of the snaps. What you usually see at the interior defensive linemen, especially these guys that are as big as a Jalen Carter might be, is they're constantly rotating. Of course, it's a lot of energy. It's a lot of mass to be moving around. These guys are big, they're strong, they're powerful, and you want them at as close to 100% as you can, so you get him rotating a lot. But what Jalen Carter does is he stays in the game, and that is something that can make you one of the best of all time at your position. Now, that is quite the leap. It's only been 1 year of him really being this elite player, but if he continues this play for the rest of his career, he could be into some conversations. And I think we just need to be ready for that. Voted by his peers as one of the best this early in his career is incredibly impressive, and it just shows that we keep letting the Eagles draft these guys from Georgia and Alabama. Their defense continues to get better and better. The edge players that they selected, the league leader in sacks in Trey Hendrickson, and the man in second place in Myles Garrett. First and second place there. These two guys continues to just dominate. Now, Trey Hendrickson did it on a very bad defense, so I was a little concerned about how much appreciation he was going to get. And obviously, it's not all on sacks. We see guys lead their team in sacks that, they're not the best defensive players out there, but Trey Hendrickson is absolutely one of those elite players on the defensive side of the ball. He was the one bright spot for a Cincinnati Bengals defense that was just atrocious this season, and I'm glad he's getting the recognition from his peers. Same with Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett, I think, is just the best defensive player on the planet right now. You can argue with me, but I think he's the guy that everyone else on defense is looking up to and saying that is the guy that is ahead of me. No one is ahead of Myles Garrett as far as just consistently being the best defender in the NFL. You can make an argument for Micah Parsons, and I think he would have made this list if he was healthy. You saw the defensive impact that he made this season when he was on the field for the Cowboys. That defense went from one of the worst in the league to a defense that looked competent, started getting them a little bit of wins and momentum down the stretch of that season. Micah Parsons is a guy that's going to get a huge contract extension soon, and I think is due for a defensive player of the year. Not this year, of course, because he did deal with some of those injuries, but he's someone that I think could have made the team if he was healthy. They also put in a nose tackle there. That was Dexter Lawrence, who is one of the best defensive players in the league. He had an injury that he dealt with, missed a little bit of the season, but he's still undisputed one of the best players in all of football. He is kind of that next coming at that position. He's strong, fast, athletic, and he's able to run and pass defend from the middle, which is incredibly impressive at his size. What he does at that position, he's the one of the lone bright spots on the New York Giants really the last couple of seasons. I don't know how long that's going to last. They've got him locked up for a bit, but he is an elite defensive player, and he deserves all the love. The players continue to show him the respect that he deserves. Moving on to the linebackers, I mean, they just nailed this, right? There's a couple linebackers that are just head and shoulders above the rest, that being Fred Warner and Roquan Smith of the Ravens and the 49ers, respectively, right? Respectively. Fred Warner went out there and on a multitude of injuries was getting hurt, was playing on a broken ankle or a twisted ankle all season long. He went out there and just dominated. We saw Dre Greenlaw come back from injury for them. We saw Devondre Campbell quit in the middle of a game for them. But what he was able to do, what Fred Warner was able to do this season in a midst of just was a nightmare season for the 49ers, was incredibly impressive. Roquan Smith, of course, leading his team in tackles, a defense that has just continued to get better and better as the year has gone on. He's a guy that, if he plays at his best, the Ravens have a shot to win just about any game that they are in. Into the secondary as we wrap up the defense here. Xavier McKinney on his first year on a new team leaves the Giants, goes to the Packers, is second in the league in interceptions, had an interception in his first 5 games in a Packers uniform. He has been amazing over there at the free safety, the strong safety position. That goes to Kyle Hamilton, who's very quickly emerging as one of the league's most versatile defenders. He reminds me of a guy like Landon Collins in the short time of his prime. Now, I do think that Kyle Hamilton is better than what Landon Collins was, but what he's able to do as just a down-in-the-box safety, also coverage on tight ends, even on wide receivers, his run game, his ability to just recognize and diagnose what the offense is doing is incredibly impressive, and it's yet another reason why the Ravens' defense continues to get better as the season has gone on. And finally, the corners. I think they knocked these out of the park. You can make an argument for a couple of them, but first of all, Pat Surtain, potentially the defensive player of the year this year, obviously was going to make this list. He has been a lockdown corner going up against most of the best receivers in the NFL this year, locking almost all of them down. He has been amazing all year long. Pat Surtain on the All-Pro team, and he's joined by Derek Stingley, and I'm glad Derek Stingley made this list because he is an elite cornerback in itself in what was kind of a disappointing season for the Texans. I know the Texans are still in the playoffs, they're still alive, but this is not what they expected, at least momentum-wise down the stretch here. Derek Stingley has been amazing. That defense for the Texans is really good. The offensive line, I think, is the main issue, and it's getting to CJ Stroud's head a little bit, but that defense, I don't have a single issue with anyone on that defense. On offense, again, I thought they did a really good job. You can make an argument for a couple different players, and obviously the first one and the most important one, or the biggest one, I would say, is at the quarterback position. The players selected Lamar Jackson as the all-pro quarterback, right? And I want to say the way that voting works for this, and I probably should have said this at the beginning, but the way it works is you can't vote for anybody on your team. That's how it works. Nobody, you can't vote for yourself, you can't vote for anybody on your team. So you're voting for people that you have played against. The players voted for Lamar Jackson. And I'm curious how much of an impact this has on the AP voters that have to submit their ballot for MVP. Because, of course, this is going to be a very hotly contested race for MVP between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Both of those deserve it. Both those players deserve an MVP. There's no doubt in my mind that they do. But this is an interesting new wrinkle in it. Now that the players have their say ahead of the AP voting, I'm curious how much that affects some of the voters and if this is going to make a big impact on it. At running back, it's Saquon Barkley. Another one of those that you could potentially make an argument for a Derrick Henry. But really, at the end of the day, Saquon Barkley was the best running back. Both of them immediately huge impacts on their brand new teams after leaving some of the worst teams in the NFL. They go out there, they dominate, but Saquon Barkley, if he had played that final game, probably would have broken the all-time single-season rushing record, which is super impressive, and he's just doing things we've never seen on a football field. The wide receivers go to the two best wide receivers in the league. Jamar Chase, who has a triple crown season, and Justin Jefferson, who I think deserves a lot more credit than he's getting for how the Vikings have played this season. Now, I'm sure people are giving him his flowers. There's no doubt about it. But I think the weapons on that Viking squad are as much to get credit for as Sam Darnold in his improvement. At tight end, it goes to Brock Bowers, the rookie who has the best rookie tight end season in the history of the NFL, breaks multiple records in the top 10 for receiving yards, period, in the NFL this year. He has been amazing. He's actually the only rookie that made the list this year. You can make a couple arguments about that, but as far as being the best at your position, he's the only one that made it, and I think that should say a little bit for the Rookie of the Year race. Obviously, it's not going to affect it that much because Jaden Daniels is putting Pro Bowl level stuff up in a conference and in the NFC and completely turning that Washington team around, that whole franchise around as well. They had put a fullback in there, Kyle Juszczyk. We love fullbacks. One of my favorite things in this league is watching a fullback go to work. Love Kyle Juszczyk, one of the best fullbacks in the game. He gets his credit. And then the offensive line, Tristan Wirfs from Tampa Bay has been one of the most consistent players in the league ever since coming in. He comes in, immediately makes an impact on a Super Bowl roster, starts almost every single game. He gets recognition yet again. The Kansas City Chiefs actually have two players on the offensive line get in, and it's not the tackles. I know the tackles have been a bit of an issue for them, but Joe Thuney and Creed Humphrey both get in on the offensive line. Penei Sewell gets in as well, and Chris Lindstrom from the Atlanta Falcons gets his recognition. Again, I don't think they made a single mistake on this team. Really, I think the NFL players did a really good job, and I don't have any snubs, to be completely honest with you. Chris Boswell is the kicker. Logan Cook is the punter from the Jaguars. Marvin Mims, shout out to Marvin Mims as the punt returner, and Kevontae Turpin from the Cowboys is the lone Cowboy, actually, to make the list this year as the kick returner. What those guys do is special, and again, I'd love to hear your thoughts about which one of these guys were wrong that did not deserve to get in, but I think the NFL players killed it, and I legitimately don't have any issues with any of these guys. I'd hear out a couple arguments for potentially a wide receiver, potentially a running back, potentially a quarterback. You can make an argument for safeties over Xavier McKinney, I think, but I think at the end of the day, these are the guys that deserve to get in, and I think the NFL players got it right. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we turn our attention to the NFL teams remaining. Instead of normal power rankings, which we finished up earlier on in the week, there are just 14 teams remaining. We're going to run through them, 14 down to 1. Who are the best teams left, and who has most likely to win the Super Bowl this year? We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.